And a key piece of what some of these new entrepreneurs have done is they've broken or violated a rule of the old business model assumptions. So Jimmy Wales says we're going to create an encyclopedia for free. It's just going to be open for free for everybody. Now, there's not necessarily going to be a business model behind it, and that appears to work. And Craig Newmark says, I'm not going to suck all the margin out of all these industries that I'm sort of, doing something to. I'm just not going to try to absorb all that margin. We're seeing, in some sense, violations of common assumptions of what you might call gentlemanly traditional business courtesy. Like, of course you're going to try to maximize profits, and then we'll try to buy you, and then you'll have an IPO. Well, guess what? Craig doesn't want to have an IPO.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
The last thing he'd be
not on his
interested in.
map. Just not on his radar for doing. And he charges a few people for a few things in Craigslist, and that creates enough money that it funds a foundation, plus his staff and servers, funds a foundation that pours money into other things. That's pretty awesome.
Well, in the Google thing, it has an interesting aspect in that, advertising was such a blunderbuss, scattershot kind of business.
Right.
The old John Wanamaker, I know half my money on ads is wasted, I just don't know which half. And Google had a way to have some measurable impact and tie it back and make it a more rational deal. It's funny with the Wikipedia example that about the same time you have Encarta started. Yeah, well, of course, the one that really imploded. I remember when people would spend a fortune to have Encyclopedia Britannica because the kids' brains need to be fed, and this was the authoritative thing. And a friend of mine did an interview with Encyclopedia Britannica. It was going to be for a Wired story, and they were just totally, they were unbelievers. They could not imagine that there was any threat out there.
Wow.
And they, of course, later when they did try to monetize things, they said, oh, well, ours costs a lot of money and this other stuff is free or near free. So that didn't work. But it was the innovator's dilemma. They thought, oh, this stuff's got mistakes. It'll never be there. Without understanding, oh, hold it, with crowdsourcing, all mistakes are shallow and go away. Just flew right past it. Well, I was at your house, and Joe Lieberman won a primary, and we went on to Wikipedia to check out something about Lieberman, and it was already announced that he won the primary in that article. And Britannica hadn't been printed since Lieberman had come on the scene at all, so they had nothing. So if you're interested in current information, it was the only game in town, Wikipedia. And I never understood why that didn't come out in the comparisons. I'm a total optimist about the way this is going. Some people are horrified, but isn't it wonderful that 1984 didn't turn out like that?
Man.
And it seems to be getting more open and is more challenging if we can sort of stay on top of a few things as we go forward.
I think mostly we assume that humans are they're going to shaft you if they can. They're not really very trustworthy. So we build institutions everywhere that have that as the working assumption, and we go out and we live in them and we take them for granted, right? And I actually think that a completely different world is possible and is right now being invented before our very eyes. This is the moment when these things are being experimented with and prototyped, and in fact we're seeing that they're working and we're learning those lessons.
Well, when I work with corporations, and there's this fear of sort of, well, what happens if we take the clamps off and we let people, to my mind, be all that they can be, but give them the freedom to act? And people, well, how do you control that? And I think, no, wrong take on things entirely. You don't control that. But if you have high expectations of people, generally they live up to them.
Right.
And conversely, if, as you see in the sort of stamp your time card, just do your job culture, you have low expectations of people, they will live down to them.
Totally. Totally.
And
if you treat people like children, they'll act like children.
Yeah. So I view the role of, well, they still have the title of manager, even though the job is shifting to more of facilitation, coordination, inspirational leader.
Coaching.
But I see that as having high expectations and then feeding back when people live up to them.
Right.